Welcome to Learn Data with Mark. In this video, we're going to learn how to ingest data into Apache Kafka using command line tools. Okay, so what we've got here is a script that is printing out JSON documents. So we've got a TS string, a UID, and a count, and it's done in Python, but to be honest, it could be anything as long as you've got a stream of data. And what we want to do is get this data into Apache Kafka without downloading one of the programming language drivers. So we want to do everything just from this shell. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use a tool called kcat, which is a command line utility, which I've usually used for consuming data from Kafka, but you can also use it to produce data, which is pretty neat for our purposes. So what we're going to do is we're going to update the command to pipe data into the kcat tool. So we'll call it, so we'll go kcat, we'll pass in the -p flag, so that indicates we're going to be producing data. We'll pass in the location of the broker, and then we're going to give it an event called events1, which I've created before, and has 5 partitions. Now we'll leave that running, and we're going to go over to another tab, and let's check that the data is going in. So we'll call the kcat command again, but this time with the -c, so we're consuming some messages. Again, we're passing the broker, the event, and this time we're going to pass in a custom way that we want the messages to be formatted when they're output. So we're going to ask it to print out the key, the payload, and then 2 blank lines at the end. We'll get just 3 of those messages. And so if we run that command, we can see that we've got those messages. They're going in perfectly fine. The payload is all good, but we don't have a key. And so I was wondering, like, oh, okay, does that mean that every single message went to the same partition? And so we can actually run a command using a tool called getOffsetShell, pass in the broker, pass in the topic, and we can actually see that Kafka has randomly assigned a partition. And so actually we're still good. We've got the messages being split between those partitions. So there's no problem there. But why might we want to specify an explicit key rather than just letting the messages get randomly assigned? So there are a few reasons. So the first one is message ordering is done by partition. So we need to make sure events with the same key are in the same partition. Otherwise, if we had a bunch of messages that we were expecting to be in a particular order, so maybe they were produced in the right order, they might then be consumed in the wrong order if we've got those keys, like an ID for the message going into different partitions. And so that wouldn't necessarily be what we want. Another reason is if you're using the compaction function of Kafka, it does that based on, like to keep just the latest event, it does that by using the key, so we wouldn't be able to use that feature. And then finally, tools like ksqldb work much better if we have keys specifically defined. So we've probably been a little bit naughty by not defining the key. So let's see if we can rectify that problem. So what we're going to do, we're going to go over to another tab, and we're going to again call our script that generates data. And this time we're going to pipe the stream of events into JQ. So JQ is a JSON processing tool, again, a command line tool. We need to make sure that we pass it in with the -c, so that's for compact, and -r, so that's for raw, so that it's going to print out JSON that can be consumed by kcat later on. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to print out a command that has the key and then a separator, which in this case, we're going to use a rolling over the floor laughing emoji, but basically anything that isn't in your payload is perfectly fine. And then we're going to have the payload afterwards. And so if we run that command now, we can see that it prints it out. So we've got the key, we've got the emoji, and then we've got the payload at the end. And so what we want to do now is we want to pipe that into kcat. So let's update our command. Again, most of it is quite similar. One difference is events2 topic. And then finally, we need to tell it what's going to be the way to split the key and the payload. So we just need to pass in that emoji again. So if we run that, and now let's go back to our other tab again, and we'll call this kcat command. And so you can see this time we have got a key and we've got a payload for each of our messages. So perfect, we've managed to sort that out. And then finally, let's just have a look at the offset command again. And you can see this, we've still got the events splitting across partitions. That's perfect. Everything is working as we would have hoped. Okay, so that's the end of this video in which we've learned how to import data into Kafka using only command line tools. If you found the video useful, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.